Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture, and today, a video retrospective of the superheroines of the golden age of comics. I've done a few videos looking at, say, the first year of Wonder Woman or Black Cat, Phantom Lady. That got me interested in the subject and gave me the desire to explore a little bit, research a little bit. So what I present here is a rundown chronologically of superheroines with, we'll veer off from that definition a little bit here and there, but superheroines introduced during the golden age of comics from about, say, the 1930s till about 1955. We'll take a look at who they are, when they were created, who created them, and I'll give you some thoughts on them. It's not exhaustive. There's a few minor characters that I've left out along the way, but there's a lot of ladies in this one, and I think you'll enjoy it. So, without further ado, let's get started. And, okay, maybe not quite a superheroine, but I thought she was worth mentioning. Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, first appears in Wags number 46 in January of 1938, and then made her American debut in Jumbo Comics number 1 in September of that year. She had a good 16-year run in comic books created by Will Eisner and Jerry Iger, although there's some argument over how involved Eisner was in the process. They had a studio, though, so they both get the credit. So is she a superhero? Well, she is in peak physical condition, like Batman, for example. She does tangle with, evil folks in the jungles, and she did learn to speak with animals, so kind of a supernatural power from a witch doctor. So maybe she's a little bit of a superheroine. Okay. She's obviously inspired by Tarzan, of course, and H. Rider Haggard's She. She really helped launch the Jungle Girl archetype in Golden Age comics, and there were a lot of them, and they often had really, really good art. She's also, though, just a very successful early comic book heroine. So I do think she deserves recognition in this video. But most of all, Sheena really kicked butt. Some people have an idea that women were portrayed during the golden age of comics solely as damsels in distress or love interests or what have you. Part of the point of this video is to show that there were some really awesome women in comic books at that time. All right, so she's exhibit number 1. In 1940, we get Phantoma, another jungle heroine. Not really a jungle girl per se, although later on, a later incarnation would be much more of that sort. She's a very odd character created by a pretty odd guy, Fletcher Hanks. She first appears in Jungle Comics number 2 in February of 1940 and enjoyed about a 4-year run. She is a jungle goddess possessed of weird sorceries and absolutely has no qualms about just taking people out permanently. Remember, the idea that there were, women were sort of, gentle and helpless in the golden age. Not true, not by a long shot. And you're going to see quite a few more, but very interesting character, very interesting art style. Fletcher Hanks' work has become sort of popular recently. It's really for the oddity. But like I said, after he left the strip, it becomes a much more sort of vanilla jungle girl stuff. You don't have the weird skull face or the magic, really. So it did change over time. The Woman in Red. So we've had 2 jungle girls. Let's go more to a kind of more traditional mystery woman here. The Woman in Red first appears in Thrilling Comics number 2 in March of 1940. She had a solid 5-year run at Nador Comics. She was created by Richard E. Hughes and George Mandel. The Woman in Red is really policewoman Peggy Allen, who dons her disguise to deal out justice when working within the law just does not quite get the job done. She's a pretty fun character, honestly. Like the last 2, she doesn't really take any prisoners. In her first investigation, she shoots and kills 3 or 4 people. She's a policewoman and they were attacking, but still not a weak sister by any means. Eat your heart out, Punisher. Now we're going to veer a little bit off the track here. But there's a character from the Golden Age that really has to be mentioned, and that is the Catwoman. Look, I've done a video on her Golden Age arc, so you might want to check that out. But the arc of her character is interesting in as much as villains at the time really didn't have arcs. And part of that story is her becoming, for a little while, a heroine. Now, she originates in Batman #1 in April of 1940. As a jewel thief, she gradually transforms into the Catwoman that we all know and love, and then kind of took a hiatus, like in the 50s and into the 60s, and pops up again about the same time Batman was on TV in the mid 60s. So created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane, but a good example of the bad girl who turns good, at least for a little while, and just also a good example of how, well, again, these characters from the Golden Age don't always fit into the stereotypes people think they do. With Bullet Girl, we have an early example of the female sidekick of a superhero, sort of taking a version of his name, a version of his costume, a version of his powers. Bullet Girl debuted in Master Comics #13 in April of 1941 and would have an 8-year career fighting crime. She was created by Bill Parker and John Small. Now, Susan Kent was James Barr's girlfriend, Barr being, of course, Bullet Man. She used the same method as him to gain super strength, and she wore a similar flight helmet. Bullet Girl kind of came on strong in the comics early on, but seemed to diminish a little bit over time. Eventually, she seemed to mostly be, there to kind of get captured, give motivation to Bullet Man. But she did still get a few good licks in. Also very cool, Bullet Man and Bullet Girl did at one point have a bullet dog. So they beat Crypto to the punch by quite a few years. Black Widow had a 3-year run with only 5 appearances. She debuted in Mystic Comics #4 in August of 1940 from Timely Comics. She was a creation of George Capitan and Harry Saul, and is a very interesting character. She essentially has the name on Earth of Clairvoyant, a fortune teller, but is really an undead servant of the devil. An evil woman in life, she dies after committing murder, goes straight to hell, where Satan decides to use her to bring more evil people into his kingdom. Black Widow has powers of sorcery and a death touch. You get some references to Dante's Inferno when Satan takes her on a tour of hell. It's a very creative concept, even if it wasn't a long-lasting one. Now, this is going to be Red Tornado's second appearance in a comic retrospective for me, as she also shows up in my video on Archie's Rivals. Ma Hunkel first appeared in All American Comics #20 in November of 1940 and appeared for about 4 years, about 39 appearances altogether. She was the creation of Sheldon Mayer in his semi-autobiographical comic called Scribbly, which was about an aspiring comic book artist. Now, Ma Hunkel has no superpowers outside of an iron will and the ability to kick butt as necessary. When she needed at one point to put down a local gambling house, she took inspiration from the Green Lantern, who was the star of that comic book, and donned a costume. She nearly became the second woman to join the Justice Society of America. Now, this is obviously more of a comedy strip, but she's wearing a costume, she's fighting crime. She is a Golden Age superheroine. We reach 1941, and we get our first patriotic superheroine, and an interesting one at that. USA is the spirit of Old Glory, our flag. This puts her kind of more in the company of mythic heroes than a simple mystery man. She first appeared in Feature Comics #44 in March of 1941, and only had 7 appearances. USA was created by Maurice Gutworth and fights enemy agents in Philadelphia with magical powers. Her flag can deflect bullets and detect danger, and her Torch of Liberty permits her to fly and shoot energy blasts. USA did not have much personality or a personal life, as she was the spiritual embodiment of the American spirit. She got right down to business, though, dealing with Nazi saboteurs. She can be foiled when villains hide behind the flag. That's a nice touch, I think. Now we're going to come to one of the first characters in this group that I really, really love. Miss Fury. She's just awesome. Began as a comic strip in April of 1941 and got some reprints in comic books. Her adventures ran for about 10 years. And she kind of resembles a cross between, or the strips resemble a cross between soap operas and action films. Now, Miss Fury, originally Black Fury, was created by June Tarpe Mills, a really good artist who also had experience in fashion art and later went back to that field after she was done with comic strips. Note that she is the first woman creator we've had in this video, but will not be the last. Now, Miss Fury is Marla Drake, a socialite. Lots of socialites in this video. She inherited a Black Panther catsuit that, when donned for a masquerade party, gave her super strength and speed and helped her to foil an evil plot. It is a really fantastic comic strip. One of my favorites. This was a little photorealistic thing that I popped out of Grok, just so you could get an idea of what she might have looked like in real life. Kind of scandalous. Silver Scorpion only got 3 appearances in the Golden Age between April of 41 and April of 1942. Beginning in Daring Mystery Comics number 7, she was created by Harry Saul for Timely Comics and was a tremendously fun comic. Our heroine is really Betty Barstow, secretary to Private Eye Dan Harley, who is also her love interest. She is your basic non-powered hero, athletic, skilled in jiu-jitsu and investigation. And though she's called the Silver Scorpion, she does not wear silver at all. But she really could kick butt, and she had tons of personality. Great art as well, and it's a real shame that the character did not last longer. Madame Satan bears some resemblance to Black Widow, and with that skull face to Phantoma, she originated in Pep Comics number 16 in June of 1941, and had only 6 appearances, being replaced in the magazine by this red-headed kid named Archie Andrews, and the rest was history. Now, she was created by Abner Sundell and Harry Lucy. The origin story is really, literally an origin story of how she kind of got to where she is, but subsequent issues get down to business with Iola, Madame Satan, tempting mortals into sin, and then being defeated by the power of goodness, and Brother Sunbeam, a monk riding a donkey, before their souls could be claimed. She has hypnotic powers, can teleport and shapeshift, and her kiss is fatal, but a really cool design for a character, and she has been brought back by Archie Comics in the modern age, here and there. Hawk Girl is our second sidekick of this video. After Bullet Girl, she debuted in All-Star Comics number 5 in June of 1941, had an 8-year run during the Golden Age. She was created by Gardner Fox, Dennis Neville, and Sheldon Moldoff as the girlfriend and then later sidekick of Carter Hall, Hawkman. Her real name is Shira Sanders. God bless Shira. She's got guts, and she has the wings and the flying belt. But at least in her earlier outings, she spends most of her time being captured or knocked unconscious and then being saved by Hawkman. Now, you may go, oh, typical. First of all, obviously not typical. We've had a lot of female characters who just kick butt in this video already, and we're going to get a lot more. But remember also, she's a sidekick. Like Robin was a sidekick. Things like that happened to Robin as well. That's kind of the sidekick's lot in life. These were not designed to be main characters at the time. Now, Black Cat is just great. I've done a video on her first year in comics, and I can tell you she is one of my favorite of the Golden Age heroines. She got her start in Pocket Comics number 1 in August of 1941 and had a solid 10-year run with Harvey Comics. She was created by Al Gabriel. Later on would get some amazing art from other artists. Black Cat is really actress and stunt woman Linda Turner, who goes into action fighting against a Nazi spy ring, the leader of which is posing as a Hollywood director. Her love interest is Rick Horn, reporter, and damn does she give that guy the business early on. She is a non-powered hero, acrobatics, athletics, fighting ability, and she rides a motorcycle, and frankly, seems to have no fear at all. She is super aggressive in the early stories with great action scenes, and her snarky relationship with Rick is a lot of fun. If you've never read any Black Cat, dip into it. It is really good stuff. Miss America, is another patriotic heroine who appears a few months before our actual entry, the United States' entry into World War II. And this is also only the first Miss America on our list. There will be one later on. She appeared in Military Comics #1, along with Black Hawk, in August of 1941, and only had 7 appearances. She was created by Elmer Wexler. Miss America is really Joan Dale, reporter, sometimes FBI assistant. Her boyfriend is Tim Healy, an FBI agent, hence the assistant thing. She gains her ability to warp reality from the Statue of Liberty. She's kind of, praying that she could do more for all the trouble that's going on in the world at the time. And so presumably it's not actually the statue, but the spirit of liberty who grants her powers. These are fun stories. She has really wild powers that are frankly just way too overpowered, way too abusable. Sadly, what she didn't have was a lot of personality, although it was improving as the series went on with the introduction of Tim Healy as her love interest and all that, and boss at the FBI. But they're fun little stories, but you can kind of tell why she didn't really catch on. Just not a lot of personality to the character. If you want personality, 1941 was a big year for superheroes and superheroines. 41-42 seemed to be the peak of the original superhero boom. It was also prime territory, again, for patriotic heroes, and thus Miss Victory. Miss Victory debuted in Captain Fearless #1 in August of 1941. She lasted until 46, 28 appearances in 5 years. She was created by Charles Quinlan and an unknown writer. In real life, she was Joan Wayne, not John Wayne, Joan Wayne, a government stenographer who had enhanced strength and durability for some reason. We don't really know where that comes from. But whatever the reason for those powers, she was pretty rad. One of my favorites in this video, frankly, in her first appearance, she throws an Axis spy out the window of, you can tell, a very tall building. Not really worrying about what was going to happen to him or what might happen to people on the ground floor. So she had a lot of spunk. And again, very aggressive. A lot of these female, characters were extremely aggressive and frankly quite deadly in fighting evil. So lots of spunk, lots of fun with this character. Nelvana of the Northern Lights, one of the more interesting Golden Age heroines. First appearance was in Triumph Adventure Comics #1 in August of 1941. Sadly, she only had about 35 appearances that I can find. She was created by Adrian Dingle for Hillborough Studio, a Canadian publisher. Her civilian identity is Alana North, but she is in fact a demigoddess who fights evil in Canada. Nelvana is pretty darn powerful. Telepathy, invisibility, super speed, heat rays. She had a beautifully drawn strip, which was highly imaginative, and I'm sure was an influence on John Byrne's Snowbird of Alpha Flight. Well worth looking if you haven't ever read any of the Nelvana strips. Now, I've done a video on Phantom Lady's first year of existence, so I won't delve too deeply here. But Sandra Knight, inventor and socialite, started her crime-fighting career in Police Comics #1 in August of 1941. That was also the comic that Plastic Man first appeared in. She was created by Arthur Petty for the Eisner and Iger studio, but would maybe become most famous from the amazing art of Matt Baker. Phantom Lady fights crime and the Axis in Washington, D.C., along with love interest Donald Borden of the U.S. State Department. She has no powers other than athleticism and fighting ability, but she does have a handheld device called the Blacklight, which casts darkness the way a flashlight, casts light. The early Phantom Lady comics are a little rough in terms of art, but they're fun. Not too many twists in them. They're pretty straightforward stories. But Phantom Lady does some spectacular stunts. It gets some great fight scenes, a lot of courage. The later books with Matt Baker are just absolutely beautiful and well worth looking. But one of my favorites from this golden age of superheroines. Wildfire. Now, most of the superheroines we've seen so far have either been of the sort of non-powered variety, and there were a lot of male characters like that too, or they kind of had the super strength, speed stuff, invulnerability that you get with a lot of superheroes. Wildfire, on the other hand, had fire powers granted her by the spirit of fire when she was a young girl who was almost killed in a forest fire. She first shows up in Smash Comics number 25 in August of 1941. Notice a lot of first appearances in August of 1941. She only had about 13 appearances, though, overall. She was created by Robert Turner and Jim Mooney. Carol Vance Martin is a socialite again, who can, like I said, control fire, shoot flame darts, create fire shields that melt bullets, and she could fly. She also has super strength. Not all that different, really, from the original Human Torch when you get down to it. Wildfire had really good art, really good action, and an inventive uses for her powers. I love that her long hair trails behind her when she flies, like a comet's flame, kind of reminiscent of Starfire. She had a really cool villain in one issue called the Fire Devil, a saboteur who had a gang that kind of reminded me of Cobra Command, but really cool strip, not a lot of appearances, but worth looking into. Now, before Spider-Woman, that we all know from the 70s, and before Spider-Man, we had the Spider-Queen. She first appeared in The Eagle, number 2, in September of 1941, and despite being very clever and very cool, only unfortunately had 3 appearances. Spider-Queen was created by Elsa Lissau, not a forgotten female comic creator, but a name invented by Luis and Arturo Casanueve. She is really chemist Shannon Kane, who builds on her husband's inventions and research after he is murdered. Specifically, she uses a web fluid that is shot from bracelets, very similar to what Spider-Man did. Her love interest in these strips is Mike O'Bell, a detective. Spider-Queen was a really great strip, lots of action, and she has very creative uses for her web fluid. Again, very similar to Spider-Man. You should really check that one out if you can. Flame Girl is another sidekick, this time to the Flame. She originated in Wonderworld Comics number 30 in October of 1941 and had only 3 appearances. Now, Flame Girl was the creation of Will Eisner and Lou Fine. She is really Linda Dale, girlfriend of Gary Preston, the Flame. I like how superheroes with girlfriends, often bring them into their crime fighting. Togetherness is very important in a relationship. Now, like the Flame, she has impressive acrobatic, athletic, and fighting skills, plus all those flame powers. A very short run, but a merry one. Linda Dale had guts. She gets involved in crime fighting really before she even has the powers, and she rushes right in once she does get those powers. Very cool character. Now, if there's one Golden Age superheroine that regular people are aware of, and some folks might think she was the first, and we can tell, no, not quite, it is Wonder Woman. She is actually pretty far down the list in order of creation. She first appears in All-Star Comics number 3 in October of 1941, created by William Marston and Harry G. Peter. Her creator's story is maybe more interesting than her own. He lived in a sort of 3-way relationship, believed bondage was the good way to mental health. He's a strange dude. Now, I've done a review of Wonder Woman's first year in print. To sum it up, beautiful art, kind of odd writing from an odd man, and Etta Candy, her sidekick, is maybe one of the greatest sidekicks ever, and one of my favorite characters from the Golden Age. Now, I went ahead and had Grok create an image from one of the drawings of what she might have looked like back in the Golden Age. I think it came out pretty good. But Wonder Woman, very important character, exists to this day. Probably when you get down to it, she is the champion of all the Golden Age superheroines. And even though a lot of these other ones, they had some maybe even better stories sometimes than her, but she's the one who really survived. It is amazing how often, in the apparently highly, religious, conservative, very suppressed 1940s that people imagine, how often characters had Satan in their name. Lady Satan first appeared in Dynamic Comics number 2 in December of 1941, and her last appearance was 11 years later in 1967. Now, that seems like an amazing run. There were actually only 7 stories in between those 2 dates, though. She didn't show up an awful lot. She was created by the great George Tuska, well known for Iron Man, much later. She's a socialite, again, and a spy, whose true identity is unknown. Along with her espionage skills, she has magic powers, and later stories kind of shift the character and make her more magical than a spy. They played with this character a bit. She was, well, frankly, not an amazing comic strip, but I kind of liked the character, bold, a little reckless, And she has a serious body count, and I don't mean that in the modern meaning, shoots people, stabs them in the back, etc. She means business when it comes to dealing with, spies and saboteurs. Now, Margot the Magician had only a single appearance in Uncle Sam Quarterly #2 in December of 1941. Created by Bill Bydern, she was a Chinese stage magician that commanded real magic powers, kind of like Zatanna. I think she's worth mentioning because her story is pretty interesting. It's set in Shanghai, during World War II with the Japanese invading and, holding the city. It really might have been a classic strip if it had managed to continue, and has some really, really nice art. You might want to go check it out if you can find it. The Blonde Bomber is not quite a superheroine, frankly. Blonde Bomber is more of a nickname than anything else. She first appeared in Green Hornet Comics #7 in April of 1942 and had only 19 appearances over 5 years. A Harvey publication, she was created by Barbara Hall, so our second woman creator for this video. Hall also drew Black Cat at a certain point, Girl Commandos, and eventually she went back into fine art, which is kind of where she started. Ultimately, she founded an artist's colony in Vermont. The character is really Honey Blake, a newsreel camera woman who knows a little bit of chemistry as well. She's a daredevil gal, which I love. She's kind of the Lois Lane type, but she doesn't have Superman saving her. She's got to get out of trouble on her own. Very cool strip. You should definitely check it out. Black Angel, one of my favorites from this bunch, really. And I need to read much more Black Angel, although there's not a ton to read, unfortunately. She is really socialite, again, Sylvia Manners of England, who takes to the skies in a fighter plane to dogfight the Nazis, including Baroness Blood. Sylvia appeared for the first time in Air Fighters Comics #2 in November of 1942, racked up about 22 appearances over a couple years. Just way too short a run for this character. She was created by John Cassone, who produced a fantastic strip. Funny, sexy, action-packed. It may be the first time I've ever seen a heroine just kick a guy right in the groin in an old comic book. The action to me was reminiscent of Jack Kirby's Captain America, but the art has a Jack Cole quality you can see there. It's sort of an odd, but it really works, and it's a very cool strip. Check that one out. Now, also from Air Fighter Comics, we get Valkyrie. Now, as with Catwoman, Valkyrie is both heroine and villainous. She made her debut in the same issue as Black Angel, in fact, as a foe of Airboy. She was created by Fred Kita and Bill Quackenbush and has one of the great costume designs of any era. Her real name is Lieselotte von Schellendorf. She is a German aviatrix. Valkyrie is a badder bad girl than Catwoman, frankly, and she made a bigger turn to the good side when she finally did make that turn. A great character. Visually, she's got kind of a Joan Bennett thing going for me, but you can see what she's doing there with that whip. She was all in on evil, but she really does make a turn to the good side. And I think in much later strips, they kind of brought her back as a bad guy for a little while. Some of these strips, they don't have the continuity that we expect, having grown up, like I did on Marvel and DC Comics. Another new favorite of mine, and frankly, I didn't really love her all that much in her 80s appearances in the All-Star Squadron, is Liberty Bell. She first appeared in Boy Commandos #1 in December of 1942. She got 50 appearances over 5 years, so a pretty legit career in crime fighting. Liberty Bell was created by Don Cameron and Chuck Winter. She is Libby Lawrence, a secretary of Philadelphia, who gains superpowers when somebody rings the Liberty Bell. She has a relationship with this guard there. I mean, not like a girlfriend relationship, who guard at the Liberty Bell, who rings it for her when she calls. So, when she needs superpowers, she lets him know and she gets them. When the bell is rung, she gets super speed, super strength, and super stamina. Liberty Bell is a real butt kicker, excellent character. She has a little Veronica Lake thing going on as well, which doesn't hurt, but a very, very cool character. Mary Marvel falls into the category of female spin-offs from superheroes. Damn if I don't like her, and she's really much more than a sidekick. The decency inherent in Captain Marvel and the whole Marvel family really appeals to me. Mary first appears in Captain Marvel Adventures number 18 in December of 1942, created by Otto Binder and Mark Swayze. She is in reality Mary Batson, the long-lost twin sister of Billy Batson. Apparently she was based on Judy Garland. Now, Mary Marvel is one of the most powerful superheroines in this list, right up there with Wonder Woman and Miss America, and thus with Captain Marvel and Superman as well. Now, while she's known for being a sweet kid, and she is, she could also put the boot in from time to time, I think much more so than Supergirl did when she showed up in the Silver Age. Golden Age superheroes and superheroines did not wear kid gloves. They dealt with crime pretty darn harshly. We're now in 1943. The Black Orchid is another one-issue wonder appearing in All New Short Story Comics number 2 in March of 1943. This was a Harvey comic. She was created by George Tuska. Now, Black Orchid was really Detective Judy Allen, a non-powered superhero, and the love interest of Rocky Ford, who was a superhero called the Scarlet Nemesis. The key was they didn't know one another's secret identities. So they kind of had a relationship as Judy Allen and Rocky Ford, and a different one as Black Orchid and the Scarlet Nemesis. Kind of a cool idea, but unfortunately it did not really take on. All right, now, while exploring these characters, like I mentioned, I found a few who became particular favorites of mine. Lady Luck is one of them. Originating in Smash Comics number 42 in April of 1943. She had a pretty good 6-year run. Lady Luck was socialite Brenda Banks. Her love interest, there was usually a love interest in these things, was Police Chief Hardy Moore. She is your typical non-powered heroine, athletic, good at fighting, mistress of disguise, crack detective, etc. The character was created by Will Eisner and Chuck Mazzugian, and there is really, really great art in this first story. Kind of in the Jack Cole / Good Girl art style. You know, it's just a little more cartoony in the face, but it gives a lot of expression, a lot of personality. Now, strangely enough, she did not have a costume in her first appearance, but she mentions that she just doesn't have it handy. So she's already got a costume, but we actually don't see it. She also stabs a bad guy in the back with a knife in her first appearance and shoots a guy and kills him in her second. Lady Luck does not play. I'm telling you, these ladies had body counts, and like I said before, not in the modern context. Miss America, our second Miss America on the list, reads a lot like a takeoff of Mary Marvel. There's the whole teenage sweetness angle, and maybe that's to be expected, since Otto Binder was one of her creators, along with Al Gabriel. Her first appearance was in Marvel Mystery Comics number 49 in November of 1943, and she managed more than 90 appearances over 5 years. The art was solid at the beginning, but not as badass as some of the ladies in this retrospective when Ruth Atkinson Ford took over in Miss America magazine. Damn, I mean, amazing art, and you have to check it out. I know. Now, you might feel weird as a grown man, you know, assuming I'm speaking to a grown man and not somebody else, but as a grown man, you might feel funny opening up even a digital copy of Miss America magazine because it was sort of a teen girl magazine, but you got to check this art out. It is incredible. Ruth Atkinson Ford was an amazing artist. Now, Miss America was teenager Madeline Joyce, a socialite. She had the strength of 1,000 men, invulnerability, levitation, and flight, basically on par with Wonder Woman, Mary Marvel, and of course Superman. When Marvel's Silver Age got started, this character would have been in her mid-30s and probably could have been still fighting crime in New York. Would have been fun to see her interact with the early Avengers. She could have really given them some well-needed attitude adjustments. So 1943 only has 3 major additions to our legion of super ladies. The superhero boom, you could see, kind of crests in 1942 and was at this point slowly starting to recede. But Miss America, check it out. Really good stories. In 1945, Mista of the Moon. Now, Mista is another character that might not be a true superheroine, but she's close enough for me. She first appeared in Planet Comics number 35 in March of 1945 and ran for 4 years, racking up about 28 appearances. She was created by Joe Doolin. She was really Anna Thane, a technician on the moon. In the future, she awakens along with her, I think, twin brother from this sort of hibernation thing and discovers that the evil god Mars is trying to destroy humanity, basically. And he gets a hold, kind of possesses her brother. It's a really cool concept. She ends up becoming the protector of Earth from the moon. Again, she's on the moon. She's protecting it from Mars. Uses super science, fighting ability, and high technology to do so. Mista was a really great adventure strip. Fun 40s sci-fi. Interesting concept. With Mars destroying education to throw humanity back into barbarism, and Mista opposing him at every turn. And she has this really awesome robot. You should really check it out. Miss Mask first appeared in Exciting Comics, number 51, in September of 1946. And she lasted about 3 years, only 16 appearances. She was created by Lynn Streeter, and she was extremely cool. Her secret identity is Dana Adams. Socialite. Again, rich women really, pulled their weight back in the 40s in fighting crime. You got to give them that. Her love interest is Russ Bowman, a reporter. Again, a non-powered superheroine. Miss Mask really packs a punch and is another great example of sort of street-level heroine who just kicks ass. Lots of personality as well. Well worth the read, and some really, really incredible art. Check it out. Blonde Phantom got her start in All Select Comics, number 11, in the fall of 1946, and though she only had 11 appearances, she has popped up a few times in Marvel continuity, especially in John Byrne's She-Hulk comics. She was created by Stan Lee and Sid Shores, and is in reality Louise Grant Mason, secretary at the Mark Mason Detective Agency. Now, originally she's Louise Grant. In later continuity, she had married him, so Louise Grant Mason. Socialites and secretaries are the key occupations for Golden Age heroines. The Blonde Phantom comics are really great. I really enjoyed them. She's an excellent character, really good action, a lot of personality in them. And I want to emphasize the fact that the superheroines were sort of drawn back then, obviously, in a pinup style. And look, the guys weren't drawn to be frumpy either. Of course, Red Tornado, not so much. But even though they're drawn for, obviously, a pinup look, they do not skimp on action in these stories. They are well worth reading if you dig, Captain America kicking butt, Batman punching out bad guys. You're going to get it with these superheroines as well. Don't pass them by. We're in 1947 now. Namora is another spin-off of a male hero, in this case, Namor the Submariner, Imperious Rex himself. She was a creation of Ken Bald, Bob Powell, and an unknown writer in Marvel Mystery Comics number 82, May of 1947. She made many appearances over 8 years. Her real name was apparently Aquaria Nautica Neptunia, and she was possessed of the same super speed, strength, agility, stamina, invulnerability, and flight as Old Subby, making her one of the more powerful of these Golden Girls. Now, Namor remained the star of his strip, but Namora was a pretty cool addition. Marvel Comics had a great lineup at the time. Human Torch, Submariner, Blonde Phantom, Captain America, and Miss America. It was pretty legit for a Golden Age lineup. Not as big maybe as what DC had, but really quite legit. We now come to another one of the most popular and long-lasting superheroine characters, the Black Canary. Now, I know, not the same woman who now has the same name, but her mother, but still, Black Canary is sort of mother or daughter. It's kind of the same character, and she's done quite well for herself. She was introduced, of course, in Flash Comics, number 86, in August of 1947, had about 37 appearances during the Golden Age, and would eventually join the Justice Society of America. Created by the great Robert Kanigher and equally great Carmine Infantino, who designed her costume. I think it is one of the best superhero costume designs in the history of comics, period. Kind of minimalist, but man, it just freaking works. Now, she is, in fact, florist Dinah Drake, not Doris Day, I don't know where I was going with that, who masquerades as Black Canary. Maybe Doris Day could have played her, though, in a movie. That might actually have worked. Okay. She masquerades as Black Canary to fight crime. Black Canary is just in the action girl genre of these characters. She kicked ass and took names, and often was saving Larry Drake, her sort of boyfriend, who was a detective, but kind of down and out. Excellent character, though. If you can find like an omnibus trade paperback of the Golden Age stories, do check them out. They're amazing. Moon Girl is a really interesting one for me. She debuted in Moon Girl and the Prince, number 1, from EC Comics in the fall of 1947. only had about 11 appearances. She was created by Max Gaines, Gardner Fox, and Sheldon Moldoff, and is for all intents and purposes Wonder Woman. I mean, she's definitely a takeoff of Wonder Woman. She is a princess from a lost city of women. She has super strength and invulnerability. Her origin tale, if you've seen the origin tale of Wonder Woman, it has a lot of text portions. So does hers. Now, the story for her is, in order to be wed, a man must defeat her in combat. The prince in the title is Prince Mingu. He gives it a shot, and he's defeated by her. And he leaves, and he ends up going to America to start his life over again. When Moon Girl, though, later decides that she really does love him and wants to marry him, she follows him to America, and there she becomes Claire Loon, a teacher in a boys' school. And I'm sure the boys were pretty happy about that. This comic really shows what Sheldon Moldoff could do when he wasn't drawing in somebody else's style, which he really kind of did in Batman. Excellent art in these things. Well worth it just for the art alone. But the other really interesting thing about this and the whole Wonder Woman angle is there's a story I picked up about Wonder Woman was in the Justice Society of America, which was written by Gardner Fox. Now, if you've ever looked at any of the Justice Society stories or the early Justice League ones from the Silver Age, the general formula was the heroes would have some kind of challenge. They would break into small teams or individually go out, deal with individual tasks, and then kind of come together at the end. He was writing one of those scripts, wrote the portion for Wonder Woman, and her creator, Marston, basically rewrote the entire thing. He was extremely protective of Wonder Woman. Didn't want anybody else writing her or shaping her at all. Now, apparently Fox wasn't into conflict, didn't want to have any more of this kind of stuff going on. And it's the reason that Wonder Woman becomes a much less used character in the Justice Society stories. It wasn't because of any kind of prejudice against her because she was a superheroine. It's because she had a very protective and possessive creator. And I got this feeling that Moon Girl might have been Gardner Fox saying, if I could have written Wonder Woman without any interference, here's this kind of stuff that I would have done. It's a really, really cool strip. You should definitely check this one out. We're now in 1948, so we're getting real close to the end of the Golden Age. August of 1948 brought two new superheroines for Timely/Marvel Comics. One of them was Ken Bald's Sun Girl #1. Now, she only had 11 appearances. The superhero boom had just about run its course by this period. Comics were being canceled. It was heading for the end. Sun Girl is really Mary Mitchell, a secretary and girlfriend of Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch. She has a solar ray projector and a super sensitized tracer. So basically, she is a high-tech heroine with, as you can see, some really, really good art. Sun Girl was just a charming comic, an action comedy, like I said, with great art. And holy moly, could she fight. This is a feature that should have had a longer life, really. And if it hadn't been kind of at the tail end of the superhero thing, it probably would have. Really great fight scenes, knocking people through windows, diving on them. And presumably she was inventing her own gadgets. So just a really great character. And again, we're talking 48. So when you think about the Marvel universe beginning in the very early 60s, it's only a little over a decade. This is a character they could have easily brought into the comic books as still operating or even just as a side character. Maybe she would have had some dealings with Reed Richards, who, another scientific genius. Now, Venus often gets included with superhero comics, but she was really more in the sort of working girl humor strip territory, which is why she gets a mention in that Archie's Rivals video I talked about doing. She first appears in Venus #1 in August of 1948, had 19 appearances over about 4 years. She was created by Stan Lee, Ken Bald, and Bill Everett. Now, Venus is actually the goddess Venus, and she is the queen of the planet Venus. She comes to Earth and winds up taking the identity of Victoria, Vicky, Nutley Starr, and getting a job with Beauty magazine. She has Whitney Hammond, the publisher of Beauty, as her love interest. Now, on Venus, she has super strength and can cause a passion and love in people. On Earth, those powers disappear. She is made editor of Beauty Magazine, which makes dark-haired Della, who wanted the job, her enemy. So there's a little bit of like a Betty Veronica thing going on with those two. Although I think Della really didn't want the publisher as much as she wanted the job. But it gets put aside, like I said, Golden Age hero stuff all the time, but really more in the Millie the Model, Kathy Keene mode, that kind of working girl humor, but really, really nice art in this one. And again, definitely worth checking out if you like those kind of books. Folks, we are in the 1950s now, and there aren't too many superheroes or superheroines left. Doll Girl appears in Doll Man number 37 from December of 1951. She had about 10 appearances. She was created by Will Eisner. She is Martha Roberts' love interest to Daryl Dane, the Doll Man, has the same shrinking power as him. The Doll Girl stories are pretty standard girlfriend gets powers stories. Martha had this long history with Doll Man previous to getting her powers. She was a fun character, though, a real go-getter who literally wills her powers into existence so she can help Doll Man. Fantastic art in some of these by Ross Andrew. Check them out. A few years later, we get a very clever character called Tomboy. In Captain Flash number 1 in November of 1954, she only got 4 appearances, which was not nearly enough. Tomboy was really Janie Jackson, a student who uses her physical abilities to fight crime. She was created by Edward Moritz. Now, she is basically late elementary school, early junior high age. So a little older than Robin when he started, a little younger than Robin at this point in comic book continuity. And not a DC character. I'm just comparing her to Robin, though. So obviously not physically imposing, but she kicks ass. And her sort of, the Janie Jackson identity, she's this very, prissy sort of, girl who loves pink and, rainbows and ponies and all that. The tomboy persona is where she goes out and really kicks butt. Good action strip with just a sadly short life. You get, like I said, you get the sort of tomboy versus girly girl thing. You get her father, who's a police detective, trying to arrest her as a vigilante. It's a really cool strip. But with her, we actually come to the end of the Golden Age, technically. But there's one more superheroine that I want folks to consider. The Silver Age is supposed to begin with the introduction of the Barry Allen Flash. But comics like Superman and Batman didn't just suddenly change from one style or format to another when the Silver Age dawns. There's a lot of continuity between there. Kathy Kane, socialite and circus performer / stunt woman, kind of like Black Cat, took on the mantle of Batwoman in Detective Comics number 233 in July of 1956. Technically a Silver Age character, but I think she deserves inclusion with the Golden Age. She continued her adventures for 11 years, though, into the Silver Age, so much more of her life is there than in the Golden Age. But she has that Golden Age feel to her. She was created by Edmund Hamilton and Sheldon Moldoff, fights crime in about the same way as Batman, who is her love interest and sometimes rival. Batwoman was a really fun character. The stunt woman thing made her perfect for action, keeping up with Batman and Robin. Of course, she would eventually get a sidekick in Batgirl. Not that Batgirl, the first Batgirl. Then there'd be a second Batgirl about 10 years later. But here we come to the end of our Golden Girls, the superheroines of the Golden Age. I hope you see there is a lot of variety in these characters, and they are mostly really fun strips. These girls kick butt. They're not what a lot of people probably would assume they would be, with some of the attitudes people have of the olden days. Look, some of that stuff did exist back then, the same way some of it exists now. But there was a much more varied culture back in the 40s, the 30s, and the 50s than most people realize. Check it out, whether you're watching movies, listening to music, or reading comic books. But a lot of great characters in these Golden Age superheroines. Now, my favorites, as I went through, and I actually have quite a few of them, because there's just a lot of these characters are really cool and were really surprising to me. I didn't necessarily expect a lot of this stuff. Sheena, of course, is awesome. Catwoman is a given. But you also have, like I said, Miss Fury, very cool. Silver Scorpion, short run, but I really liked her. Black Cat is incredible. Miss Victory was really surprising. When she throws that dude out the window, I was like, oh my God. I was posting it on Twitter while I was reading it because I couldn't believe it. Phantom Lady, very cool as well. Spider Queen, surprisingly good. Wonder Woman, of course, I really love. You could watch that video I did of her first year. She's a really impressive character. And Etta Candy is just fantastic. The Blonde Bomber, very cool. Black Angel. Dude, I'm only about 2 or 3 issues in. Dude, they are wild. Liberty Bell was a real surprise since I'd seen the sort of 70s version that came later. I think mostly written by Roy Thomas, who was fine. Didn't make me like, but the original was just fantastic. Lady Luck was great. Those Miss America stories, the second Miss America, again, you got to look at them just for the art alone. They are incredible. Miss Mask, The Blonde Phantom, Black Canary, I absolutely love. Moon Girl was incredible. Sun Girl was a real surprise as well. And Tomboy. Tomboy's just cool. Only 4 appearances, but really cool. There's so much good stuff in the Golden Age. If you haven't dipped much into them, you should. You can go to a site like Comic Book Plus and read some of this stuff because it's in the public domain for free. Check some of these things out. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. But that'll do it for this video. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. That'd be very cool. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. Read some of these Golden Girls. I think you'll be happy with those books. And I will see you again, hopefully soon, in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.